no time for stalling. The wild, wild is calling. When you risk it all, you learn to feel alive. Oh, searching for new life. Oh, reaching for new heights. Whoa, into the daylight. So open your eyes, we're making the climb, taking the dive, deep into the wild. Into the daylight. So open your eyes, we're making the climb, taking the dive, deep into the wild. Deep into the wild. Deep into the wild. Deep into the wild.
All right, everyone, can you hear me? Okay, cool. So hello, everyone. Good afternoon from RUMW. My name is Mohammed Shawal, and I would like to welcome you. I would like to welcome you to Courage at Crossroads, a Firechat Power Talk session with our esteemed guest for today. But before I introduce you to our guest, how's everyone doing? I hope everyone had your lunch and in a good mood, okay? Because we'll be having a conversation about what makes us better leaders within, how our values shape our character, what does it take to walk the road less traveled, and how to manage mental health and succeed in this rapidly changing world. Okay, so our guest for today is Mr. Andreas M. Vogiatzakis. So a little information about him, yeah? Known as a multiple award-winning marketing man, Andreas is a game changer, an NLP executive coach, a certified trainer, a TEDx speaker, and among the 100 most inspirational LinkedIn icons, okay? So with the purpose to be the catalyst for positive change, he has guided many people and businesses to find their purpose and achieve exponential growth and success. In his tenure, he has built and managed several media agencies, okay, for publicists, Omnicom, WPP, and Havas, leading them to flagship positions in their respective markets. After his tenure as the group CEO of Star Media Group in Malaysia, he launched AMV Plus Advisory in August 2020, during the pandemic, specializing in coaching, training, and consulting. Andreas brings in the forefront extensive practical experience in strategic areas such as people development, business growth, purpose creation, leadership, and transformation. A high honors advertising graduate, he has forged a life from Greece to New York, from Tokyo to Taiwan, and now he made Malaysia as his home base, and has served in numerous industry associations, several industry committees, many university advisory boards, and in multiple award juries. He is also IMW Industry Advisory Panel for one of our programs, Professional Communication. With that said, Mr. Andreas, maybe you would like to introduce yourself to the audience?
My goodness, thank you. And it's every time, in all these webinars, you do an introduction like that, I always feel so embarrassed. Here I am, this and the other and all that. But all I really have to say is that it's a privilege to be here. Thank you, everybody, for being here. So many people, really unexpected. But that's the power of IUMW. Isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's really, really, really a privilege. Yes. Thank you for the introduction. What else to say really, except that the story will unfold, and hopefully everybody will get something out of it. I'm a Kampong boy. a Greek kampong boy. I was born in a village back in 1966. Electricity came to the small village there the year before I was born and so. And so life was very, very different back then. And if we fast forward 55 years later, here we are doing webinars and being fully digitized in a world that I don't know how anyone would have ever predicted. So life changes. We try to enjoy the journey, learn from it, make it better, and delve into the future. So lots to talk about today. I was a math man who turned into a madman back in the 80s, for those who are familiar with advertising. And so the journey unfolded in mysterious and crazy ways that I didn't plan. And life brought me from Greece to the States to Asia. And here we are today to talk about leadership, to really talk about journeys and to talk about what do we want to do in the future? How do we manage all this? Where do we go from here? So yeah, it's a privilege. I'm just a kampong boy and I'm happy to be here.
You are our own Don Draper, basically. Okay, so maybe you want to tell us about what was your childhood like in Greece?
When I have to close my eyes a little bit and just really transport back in time. It was very, very, very different. I'm sure that some of you, definitely not you, you're too young, but some of the more mature people in the audience will probably remember how it used to be back in the 60s. I grew up in a small village in the heart of Crete, which unfortunately was in the news the last couple of months because of severe earthquakes that have pretty much destroyed most of it, and people now trying to rebuild it. So all of you in Alcalohori, my birthplace, my heart is with you. I wish you the best, and my mind and my prayers are with you to rebuild it better. So I was born and I grew up in that village in Alcalohori in Crete, in a rural family. So every time I say this to people that I grew up in vineyards and olive groves in the middle of the Mediterranean, of the Aegean Sea, everybody, grows their eyes and they say, wow, how lucky in the blue and the white. And I'm like, well, actually it wasn't like that exactly, because it was in the middle of the island. It was not by the coast. And working in the fields while you're growing up and going to school was very, very different back then. We didn't have air conditions. We didn't have all these necessities that we enjoy today. We walked to school. We had a blackboard and white chalk. We didn't have mobile phones. In fact, we didn't have a phone. We didn't have television. I watched television for the first time in my life when I was 9.5. And if anybody would show us one when I was 5 and 6, we would probably look at them thinking, what on earth is this? And so life was very, very different back then. But it was a life that was very family knit. It was the culture of the village that held everything together. And it was the family that was tight knit, and it was the family that was upholding the values. And we learned to appreciate a lot of things in a different way. Mom would make new sweaters from the old ones. She would many times cook outside in the open fire because gas was expensive. So the food would smell smoky, but she would convince us that for the food to be good, it has to smell smoky. And we believed her and we were happy. And it was completely different. Gathering grapes in the summer, in September, gathering olives in the winter, which was not that glamorous because it's wet and muddy, and learning to appreciate that kind of life, that you know what you have, where you are, and you value integrity, you value your work ethic. So I was galvanized with these values, but the truth of the matter is that I hated farm life. My dad used to take me to gather grapes, and he used to give me a bucket and say, go and gather a kilo if you can, because I will pay for your education. I had no choice, right? but all that kind of work I didn't like. I wanted to be the city boy. I wanted to go to the city and do other things. And of course, life did bring me to the city, and life brought me to many cities, from Athens to New York to Tokyo to Taipei and to Kuala Lumpur. And now only God knows how much I wish I could go back and live just one day of that life that taught us so much that we appreciate now. So it was a very different living back then, but it ingrained in all of us a very strong and sufficient value system to really guide us through life. And it was, when I juxtapose it to today, I can't really say that it was better or worse. It was just different. And when I was looking at my son growing up, he's now 17 and getting ready to spread his own wings and fly high, right? Lived in a very different environment with electronics, with technology, with a connected universe, with everybody a tap or a call away, which we didn't have. We used to write letters. Do you remember letters and stamps? We used to collect stamps, my goodness. Who does that anymore, because they hardly exist? But he lives in a very different world. And I think that what we really need to do is to juxtapose both, and all that change that we're going through, and really bring meaning to all of that, and make sure that we exercise the values. Because I believe that while all of these changes, while technology is fueling that change in the world, and it becomes faster and faster and bigger every single day, with geometrical proportions is that expansion, I do believe that the fundamental values never change. When we talk about work ethic, when we talk about humility, when we talk about integrity, when we talk about brotherhood and family being together, family in the broader sense, these values never really change. And I think that when it comes to our technologically driven world, and I talk a lot about that, it is really the values that matter. It's not about technology and how they change or where they change have brought us. Look what happened in the last 2 years with COVID. So if I'm grateful for one thing on how I grew up and being a kampong boy, is these values that really were ingrained in my heart, first and foremost, in order to guide me in that trip around the world.
Okay. So you were born in Crete, right? So it's the birthplace of Zeus, as I recall.
Well, it sort of is, because the myth goes that Zeus's father, Kronos, he had this bad habit of eating his kids.
Yeah.
And so his mom, who was Earth really, she hid him when he was born, so his dad would not really demolish him. And he hid him when he was born in a cave in Crete, in the eastern part of Crete, which has, the legend has it that that's where Zeus was hidden and grew up with the milk of Amalthea, the goat that was feeding him. So I guess you can say that, but the proper and official home of Zeus was Olympus. So there you have it, further north.
I remember learning about all this when I was a kid, and I still have those books.
Yeah, I love it.
By the Greek myth and all that. Thank you so much for it, Andreas. Okay, so maybe since you talk about growing from Athens to New York, Taipei, Tokyo, Malaysia, how did it came about? How did you go from kampong boy and then traveling overseas, working, and now you're here in Malaysia? How did that came about?
I can see the pattern behind your questions. So you're following the book. So okay, bring it on. That's fine. I was growing up in the village. My dad died when I was 12, and that was the last class in elementary school. And that was also the time that a teacher of mine at that time introduced us to math, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with math because it was logical. It had a very clear truth to it. It had a pattern. And in all the world that was going haywire as a 12-year-old kid, that became an anchor. So I wanted to be getting into the math school of Athens, which was at that time one of the most prestigious schools in the country. And so for the next 6 years in high school, that's exactly what I did. I was studying hard. I got into the university only to realize that after 6 years and after I achieved that, that's not what I really wanted to be. And I fell in love with advertising. Of course, I'm skipping a few chapters, which I'll show you in the book later, but I fell in love with advertising and I quit the math school to go in the States and study exactly that. One of my two sisters was living there in Florida. And so that was the only planned thing that I really did in my life at that time, to go and study advertising, graduating from the University of Florida. Everything after that was all a coincidence. And a job brought me to New York. I really became a city kid. Here is the village boy really making a debut in New York, which at that time, back in 1992, was the mecca of advertising. It was in the entire whole world. If you want to talk about advertising, you have to talk about it in New York. That was David Ogilvy territory for those who are familiar with advertising. And it was bustling. It was Madison Avenue. It was the 2 or 3 martini lunches, right, in an industry that was exploding. Of course, internet didn't exist. Mobile phones didn't exist. We used to make our media plans on fax and on a typewriter in a central secretary at the floor of the media department. But it was the city. It was New York. And life unfolded after that. I had to go back to Greece to fulfill the army requirement, which is mandatory. And again, that was not planned. It had to be done. And life brought me through different waves and different shores. And in 1997, I got the call to go in Japan, out of all places, to set up the media unit of the company that I used to work in New York. And mind you, at that time, my goodness, I'm Greek. I don't eat raw fish. People who eat raw fish must be crazy. We're Greeks. We grill it like octopus and we put lemon and olive oil and oregano in it. What is about this raw stuff? And here I am going to Japan, loving sushi and sashimi. Now I cannot live without eating it. And life took a completely different turn. And the rest is history since 1997 in Asia, except to say that after 5 years in Japan and 5 years in Taiwan, again, by coincidence, I had that absolute blessing from the heavens to discover Malaysia. So in 2006, the work brought me here, and then it became a choice to really make it my home. And I love it ever since, maybe a little bit more every single day.
That's good. That's good. Obviously, we'll love to have you here. So you're now, how many years now since 2006? Is it 14 years?
16, 15,
So you're a Malaysian now. So yeah. Okay. When you first moved to New York, right? How was it like? Is there a culture shock? Going from Greece and then straight to New York. Well, there's Florida in the middle, but still.
Yeah. Well, it was, imagine, right? The juxtaposition with everything that had happened was intense and very radical. But I guess that journey from the village, growing up, getting into Athens for another 5-6 years before going to Florida and then to New York was sort of a nice paved way. But imagine New York back in the 90s. It was a metropolis. It was just unbelievable. Everything was happening there. Madison Avenue, Broadway, the theater, the music, the streets of New York, the smells, the sounds. I just loved every second of it. And it was a big juxtaposition, and it was scary in the beginning. I was always the oddball, right? Here you have a village boy, started advertising in Florida with high honors, mind you, because I loved it. And Florida was in University of Florida in Gainesville was a university town. Everything was quiet. There was nothing compared to New York, the big capital, the big city, right? It was very, very different. But the love for advertising really anchored me. And I remember I couldn't afford anything. If I remember right, my monthly salary was a little over $1,000 at that time, and I had to spend 800 of it in the rent. But I couldn't afford the rent in the city, so I had to rent a small apartment in Elizabeth, New Jersey, across the river. And then every morning take the bus, go to Port Authority, walk up to 52nd Street from 42nd. Rain, sleet, or snow, and I've seen it all in New York in different times of the year. And I don't know, the heavens, maybe Dad up there at that time was looking after me, and I had that privilege to be in a company, DMB&B, that doesn't exist today, that had a very different work culture and work ethos with people in it that I still am in touch today, that we're really embracing the one who's not one of them and who's different, who cannot really dress like them, talk like them. He has an accent. He still tries to master English, but does a lot of mistakes. I remember one time when I started the job, I had to leave my recorded voice message on the phone. So I said, this is Andreas at DMB&B. I am not in my desk right now. Please leave a message and I'll get back to you. And my supervisor said, my goodness, you don't say you are in your desk, okay? You are not inside the drawer, you're not at your desk. So I had to really learn the hard way, and the story goes and more happen. And these were the people that embraced me, taught me, showed me around the big city in a safe and constructive way. And I'm lucky, I'm blessed, and I will always cherish that, which in some ways was similar to what happened when I came to Malaysia, because that's also warm and caring, the Malaysia DNA that I fell in love with, and I still am.
It sounds, I can relate to it because I was born in Terengganu, which is the part, the south, the east coast of Malaysia, and then came to KL and I started working here. Don't know anyone, but yeah, slowly building my way up, and then try to socialize. So yeah, I kind of understand you, okay, about it. Okay, when we're talking about being a good leader, right? So I've obviously you have lead a bunch of companies in your resumes. So what do you think is a good leader? What makes a good leader?
Wow, that's a huge question, and we'll probably need that's a training I do, right? We probably need a day or more or a lifetime to really define what's good leadership. I look back, and that's a question that I often think about myself. What kind of a leader I have been, what kind of a leader I want to become, what kind of a leader of my own life and my own self I am now. Know what I know and know what I've done right and wrong. But I would say that leadership is really about the heart. It's about a lot of things, actually, because when we look at the leaders that we admire, the leaders that we believe are the ones that bringing about positive change, I think we can find similar traits in them. And I think that leadership, for example, in no order of importance, I'll jumble it up. Leadership, it is about seeking first to understand and then to be understood. Many times we are rushing to talk first. Many times we're rushing to give our opinion first. And it is better when we try to understand where other people come from first, understand their point of view, understand what are their needs and wants, and understand where we need to lead them and how. So if we do that, and if we try to create win-win situations, is going to make us better leaders. Win-win is huge, right? And I remember my mom used to tell me that, translated, loosely translated, that in life there are no win-lose situation. It's either win-win or lose-lose, so you choose. And I think that a good leader is trying always to create win-win situations. But to do that, we need to really understand first. When I went to Taiwan, I was taught a little bit the hard way, that stayed with me, that to really lead people, you need to lead their heart first. And that is so true, because people don't really care how much we know until they know how much we care. And that is fundamentally true. So when we lead the heart, then the rest of the leadership aspect become easier. But that's not only it. At the same time, if we're going to be great leaders, we have to keep our counsel and be cool under pressure. And God knows that, especially in this environment, and I do a lot of training on managing change, for example. How do we as leaders keep our cool, give direction, and make sure that we really manage everybody under pressure in a right way, give them room to express their thoughts, wants, feelings, include them, and make sure that we lead them the right way with clarity, which I think is another big trait of leadership. A great leader has to have clarity. If the leader doesn't have clarity on what he or she wants, where he or she wants to go, what is the purpose, what is the why of the company, and make sure that that why of the company is in congruence with his or her why, his or her purpose, as well as the company purpose, and all of that is one, then we cannot really lead better. And fundamentally, I think what underpins all these traits of leadership is trust. A great leader has to build trust. You might be a great orator, you might be a great listener with sort of pretentious empathy. You can be the great questioner to ask the pertinent questions that will give clarity to everybody. But if I do not develop trust, it's not going to lead anywhere, because people are not going to follow us. And mind you, I'm not opening up a dictionary to say what are the traits of leadership here. Everything I say, what I wrote in my book, and the training that I do comes from the good, the bad, and the ugly of myself when I was in these positions where I had to build teams, where I had to manage different cultures and ethnicities, working with companies that had a completely different ethos and background. WPP is a British company. Omnicom is an American company. Havas and Vivendi is a French company. Dentsu is a Japanese company. Star Media Group is a Malaysian company, a company that has built part of this country for the last 50 years, this year being their anniversary. So it was a juxtaposition of different religions, ethnicities, work cultures that gave me a very diverse perspective and the blessed opportunity to do great things and to screw up a lot of things. And I must admit that when I was screwing up things, even now I look back and I blame myself, and I said, don't blame yourself. You need to learn from it, and how do you do it better? And so all of these come from that good, bad, and ugly experience, from the successes and the failures. And I know that I've been there where I didn't build trust. And sometimes it was because of my fault, and I should have done it different. And sometimes it was because I was new. And my initial reaction was to take myself for granted. I'm your CEO, you should trust me, but that's not really the case at all. Because leadership is not vested. Leadership is earned, and leadership is nurtured. And we really need to understand that in a deeper sense, because it's very easy when you are put in a position, some part of you, because we have two beasts inside us always, right? I have two, one here and one there. They fight all the time. Said, hey, you're the CEO, man. You have the power. You have the say. You got to do what you got to do. And then the other guy say, oh, nonsense. You need to build trust, and that's the only way to really bring people forward. And they fight all the time, and it really depends who's going to win. At different times, you can have both. You can have this winning or this winning, right? And you can see what's working and what's not. And without any doubt, defining leadership, I think that it is about empathy, it is about clarity, it is about courage, it is about vulnerability, that ability to be vulnerable in front of people and say, I don't know, and it's okay. And that integrity that really pushes you to create trust and create a team that really is cohesive and works together. So I think distilling a lot of things into just a 5-10 minute answer. And I know we have a lot of questions, and I'll leave it to you to read them and ask them. I think that's what really leadership is all about. We need to be self-aware, and we need to understand our shortcomings, accept them, work on them. Nobody's perfect. If anybody will tell me I'm perfect and I'm done, then my goodness, we make this the leader of the free world, and we are going to be all a happy bunch. That person doesn't really exist. And it's all in the journey and how we can become better by the day. So it's about all of that that would make us a great leader, I think, day by day.
Thank you for that. So you work in so many companies all around the world, okay? So I just have one question for you. Which one is the best? What kind of style is the best that you're okay with?
You mean as a style of leadership?
Yes, every company have their own, every country have their own style, right? Your culture is different. So what do you think is the best one that we all should follow?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And in fact, I do a lot of work in that area. I would not say one or the other is the best. That would be an absolute fallacy. I think that leadership style, the principles don't change. To create trust, it's fundamental. To be empathetic is fundamental. To be of high work ethos and integrity is fundamental. Now, how you're going to adjust your leadership style depends on a lot of things. It depends, for me, it depends on two broad areas. One is the outside environment and the circumstances, and I'll give you a couple of examples. And the other is your team. What is your team readiness to the situation? So for example, when you start forming a team, right, that team in its initial stage will need a little bit more involvement from you. And therefore your needle needs to turn more into the autocratic rather than to democratic, because you need to really teach them, you need to guide them. But once the team becomes more capable, the needle needs to move back to the democratic style, because they know what they're doing. And the more you interfere, the more you come across as the micromanager and the dictator, so right? And I say that having lost people because I've done that. And I know how painful that can be. Now, at the same time, having said so, you have the circumstances, right? If the circumstances allow you time in that width and breadth of space to really try, test people, let them have a mistake, learn from it, and move forward, then that's fantastic. But then the circumstances at different times, let's say, for example, you're managing a crisis, they don't allow you any time. And therefore, you need to be much more concrete, much more directive. Might translate that to dictatorial, but that's just the label. And therefore, you have no time to really ask about how you're feeling. Here we are, need to turn off the fire and then the rest. Now, having said that, so therefore your leadership style needs to be based on the circumstances and also on the readiness of your team or the readiness of the person that you're leading, right? And you have to pivot that style if you really want to be effective. If you have a democratic leader in a crisis management, you're going to probably fail the company, and you're not going to manage the crisis very well. And if you have a more stern leadership style, when people experiment and there is that bandwidth to try, fail, and redo, then people are going to leave you because they will not find you the right boss to work with. And so you need to pivot, assess, and make sure you adapt to the circumstances and to your team readiness. Now, having said that, it is then up to us as a leader to be fully self-aware, understanding our different style and how we have done in the past. What were our successes? What were our failures? And see how we can move forward stronger and change. And I think that's very, very, very important. So no leadership style, I think, is right or wrong. It really depends on our team and the circumstances. And it is really up to us to assess it in order to match all these three to make sense and become better.
Okay, that's a good answer actually. Kind of like it. Okay, obviously you mentioned about the book just now, right? And we also have one here, like the poster in our background here. Maybe you would like to tell us a little bit about your book?
That was, what can I say? First of all, that was in my head for a while, but it was not really on top of my head. It was very much hidden in the background because all these years I've been pushing a lot of my friends to write their books, tell the story to the world. And when I started my company last year in August, in the midst of the pandemic, that's when really that idea came back to the forefront of my mind. I said, well, you've been really pushing a lot of people, and you know who you are if you're watching. And sorry, I've been a pest, but I was for a good reason. So then I decided, okay, it's about time that you walk your silly talk and you do what you preach. So why don't you do it? And then I went through a period of time that I was actually doubting everything. I doubted myself. I doubted my ability to do it, to manage the project. I hate writing. I dread it. In high school, I would have goosebumps when we had to do writing on any subject. I thought my story is not good enough. I thought my story is nothing. I have my arms, I have my legs, I'm healthy, I'm fairly successful. I've done my bad things, but I've done maybe more good things. So what's the story to tell? Like, you have no arms, no legs, and you climb up mountains like Nick Vogiatzakis does, you're okay. And then I thought, after quite a bit of introspection, that no, that's not really okay. I think that everybody has a great story to tell. Everybody has gone through twists and turns. And so I sat down, I put the project together with my interviewer and with my design team. I started writing the book. It turned out to be completely different from how I planned it because it had a totally different cover. It had a totally different title. It had nothing to do with what it is today. And all evolved. And it evolved because as I started putting it together, I started discovering myself and I started discovering my own story. I also started forgiving myself. I'm still working on it because, like everybody, I've done many mistakes, right? And our tendency is to hold ourselves always responsible. And putting the book together really allowed me to understand why, to really analyze it a little bit more in my psyche, and to get into the path of amend that relationship with myself. And I realized, for example, that I was born to replace a brother I never had, I never met. He died 6 years before I was born, and I was made for that purpose. I was not deprived of love. I was raised no privileged. I was raised with no toys and no clothes, like every everybody else in the village. And that inadvertently became something that defined my life. And writing about it, talking about that, looking at everything that has happened after that, gave me further clarity. And so from the original title of the book and the original cover, through that journey, I realized that it is all about the courage at the crossroads. When I was looking back in that simple story of mine, that is really not extraordinary at all, I thought, okay, what are the values that guided me to take the decisions I had to take? When I went to Japan in '97, I remember the date and the time. It was in the early morning. I landed on the 4th of September in 1997 at Narita Airport. And after a month, I wanted to quit and go back to my old job in Athens. I thought I'm stupid. I thought I'm crazy. I thought I've done a big mistake. I thought this is not a place for me. And it was not about sushi that I learned to love in a month. It was about the work culture and how things were unfolding. And I came to the crossroads, and I remember that very clearly. And it was my personal beliefs and values that held me back to take the decision to stay and not leave the country at that time. I remember that weekend in Shibuya very, very, very clearly. And of course, it's in the book. And I wrote the story. And it was about these values that guide you in the crossroads to take the decisions that really shape your life. And so I thought that's really the appropriate title for the book, Courage at the Crossroads. And then, of course, there it is. You cannot really see it. I have to, I have to remove the background. I thought, when I was looking back, what would be that picture that would really make it to the cover? It was my favorite tree in the southern part of Crete. I used to go there every other year and just sit underneath that and look at the deep blue sea and get lost in its magical powers. And it was about developing that self-awareness, becoming mindful, self-reflect. And that really gave birth to everything else in the book. I was working with a beautiful design team from Inti, and they've done a fantastic job. I worked with the most amazing publisher of all times, Nikki, at the Inspiration Hub, a Malaysian company that I highly recommend to all of you. If you ever think about books, please go to Inspiration Hub. Nikki became an advisor, a friend, a supporter. I've never published a book. My goodness, I had to deal with ISBN numbers and where the bleed goes, the trim goes this millimeter. They had to upload it on Amazon and also on Book Depository. And we had to delve into the technical issues, and the system crashed. And I was cursing all the Greek gods, all 12 of them, that the system crashed. How can it crash? I'm Greek. It did. And Nikki was like that leader that I talked about, cool under pressure until today, guided me through the process. And after 10 months, through the thick and thin of really making that baby in the womb, we gave it birth on July 16 last summer. That was the day that I turned 55, just to celebrate 55 crazy years of an unplanned life completely. And that's what it is. It was a promise to really do what I asked others to do. And my hope with that book is twofold. First one is to really tell to all of you who are watching today, and to everybody who's not, and I say this again and again, I will not stop saying it like a broken record, that I want you to look back. And I hope that this book becomes a catalyst for you to look back to your own life, your own story, your own journey, rediscover your values that guided you when you were at the crossroads, because I know you were at the crossroads. Everybody is. Nobody's journey is smooth and one way. It has twists and turns. And really realize these, filter them, change them if they don't serve you anymore, adopt new ones that might. figure out the journey forward, live in the present, of course, but understand what it was and what you want it to be, bigger, better, bolder, with courage, more courage at the crossroads that you're going to face moving forward. And God knows in the time and age that we live in with COVID really shredded the paradigm. It's not shifted. The paradigm is completely changed forever. We will never go back to what it was. It's going to be all new and more changes are going to come, I'm sure. How do we manage ourselves? How do we navigate when we come at the crossroads? And I hope that this will become a catalyst for everybody to look back in their own journey. And why not put it in a book and publish it? Nikki at Inspiration Hub knows the way and he will help you. And the second bit really is to bring awareness to mental health. I know everybody's talking about that now, and for the right reasons, and that's good, because during the pandemic, during the last couple of years, this topic of mental health came up. For me, the penny dropped when Robin Williams and Anthony Bourdain took their life. I had the privilege to meet Anthony in Taiwan. I didn't really know him closely, but we spent a few hours together. And I would never imagine for both of them that they would decide to do that. And they did. And they were happy people. For the eyes of everybody else, successful, giving purpose and meaning to our lives for the work that they've done. And yet inside, they were boiling. And here's what happened. And I've seen throughout this period of time, so many people struggling, so many people on their knees. I was one of them. The journey to launch my own company, AMV Plus, the journey to write the book and doubt myself because my story is stupid and it's not really good to tell and write and publish a book, put it on Amazon, it was debilitating. It wasn't easy. I was on my knees many times. I was depressed. Why can it happen this way and the other way? Why can't it be better? COVID changed everything. And so I've seen people who made it. I've seen people who are still struggling. I've seen people who broke. And it was because they lost their jobs, because they didn't know what to do. They didn't have that mental strength to carry forward. They didn't know where to turn to. And I hope that this book can also be a catalyst for raising that awareness for mental health and mental well-being, because our world needs it. And as now we are returning back to normal, we are not returning back to normal, but that's what we say. And as we start reopening and going back to work in a hybrid model and all that, I think we need to pay more attention to it.
Yeah.
And remember this, that I get the flu and I can get a day off. But if I really don't feel well mentally, I will not get a day off. And how do we manage that? How do we cope with that? And this situation really accentuates all these incidents, and for a good reason, I think, to really make us all aware and a little bit more sensitized to what it really means. So yeah, go out there, tell your story, publish a book, be more self-aware to everything that surrounds us, and let's do better for the people who need it.
Yeah. Remember the date that for this book launch, July 16, right? That was the same day that I approached you for this webinar.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Because
right.
like, yeah. Okay, I kind of like the title of your book. Actually, it reminds me of my favorite poem. Actually, the Road Less Traveled by Robert Frost. Yeah, it's the same thing. Basically, it's about taking a chance about something that you're not sure where you're going and all that. It's a really good title, by the way. Congratulations on your book, by the way. Okay.
That is actually in the very, very last page of the book. That
Okay.
not the entire poem, but the excerpt of it, because I love it. Makes two of us.
Yeah. See. Okay. I think since he said it has been an hour since we start, should we go into Q&A?
Yes, please. We have as much time as you want, but let's I'll let you be the.
Yeah, I can choose a question for you.
Yeah.
Maybe we start with the question by Anita Adnan. I think it's a great question that deals with mental health as well. What do you think of the current issue of the Great Resignation, whereby a lot of employees are resigning and demand more human treatment post-COVID? Contextually in the US, of course, but I do know many Malaysians are also having this conversation.
Yeah, a great question. I think links back to your question on leadership. It links back to mental health and how do we manage ourselves moving forward. I think things are never going to be the same, and whatever we knew, forget it. We start living in a new world. And of course, it might be a hybrid and all that, but it is a new world. And we cannot be rigid in how we want it to be. I see a lot of talk, and we do a lot of training on bridging the gap between the old and the new generation. The truth of the matter is that the gap is not that huge because the fundamental human needs are the same. I want to be understood. I want to be valued. I want to be heard. And I want you to be flexible. And I will be too if you are. And it takes two to tango. And I think that if we have that flexibility and resilience, which I believe are two great traits for great leadership, being flexible and being resilient, we will achieve better things. If work can be done from home, let it be done from home. If we really need to do it from the office, let it be done from the office. And I think that flexibility will be understood. When fundamentally people align their personal purpose, their personal why into the one of the company, and they believe in it and they embrace it, people will not be rigid about, no, I only want to work from home, so I resign. Everything also changed when we look at vision and purpose and mission and values. These all need to be readjusted. What used to be is not anymore. And so therefore we need to recalibrate where we are as a company. What are these values that guide us to function? What are the rules of the game internally in our team as a company? What do we value? What do we allow? What do we don't want to allow? But that has to be a conversation. And I think that I will say this safely with a lot of certainty. I won't say 100% because nothing is 100%, but I would say this with a lot of certainty. When we have that dialogue with everybody, and when we revisit and recalibrate our vision, our mission, our values, our culture, and adapt it to how the environment has changed together as one team, this is going to go a long way. And that is going to be the answer of no resignations. It is very true. I was talking to an old colleague of one of the companies that I used to be with, and she told me that they're hiring like 30, 40 people, that big of a number, and said where to find them and how to align the values that they have. And really, it's about recalibrating ourselves. If I want to attract, think simple. Sometimes we make it very complicated. And I love all these very complicated training stuff that a lot of people do. I try not to. It's actually simple. If I want to attract you to me, what do I have to do? Don't I have to know what you think, how you think, what you like, what you don't like? What kind of a language do you want me to talk? How to dress, how to look, how to behave? If I really want to attract you, I have to change myself first. If I don't change myself first, how would I expect you to like me? It's as simple as that. So if we accept that to be true, then we as organizations need to recalibrate vision, mission, values, culture, all of that, our purpose, what we do, who we are, and the why, and really attract the talent.
Okay, thank you for that. There's also another question by Miss Laura, actually. Do you have one item or behavior that you use or do daily that contributes towards a productive and successful day? For example, like coffee, meditation, diary, maybe. What about you?
Great question. I'm trying to get into meditation. I am not, and I know I should. So thank you for mentioning that word. You see, the universe is talking to me. So, okay, I'll do it one day. But what I do is I do two things. Before I go to bed every single night religiously, I voice three things I'm grateful for the day that passed. Today, this webinar is going to be one, and all of you who are watching, and I'm grateful for that. I'm blessed. And I do that every day. Three things. That is important because it keeps things into perspective. Sometimes it's not all gloom and doom, and we need to really see on what's positive, and positive brings positive. It helps us dream better. It helps us attract more positive things, and it helps us balance ourselves in a better way. And the second thing that I do religiously every morning that I wake up, I do my prayer. I'm very spiritual. I'm not religious. It's an interesting story in the book that I quit the church called Turkey when I was 13. And it's an interesting story, but I'm very spiritual. I believe in the universe, and I don't know what's yours and what gods you're in. I do not believe in the 12 great gods, but they're great. But I'm doing my prayer every single morning. The things that I wish to do for me, for the people I care, for the world, for the universe, and that gives me a little bit of a good headway in the morning before I start my day to really put a few things into perspective, because a lot of things go wrong, you know. Our lives are complicated, and it's very easy to get into that trap. I do many times. And as easy as it is to get into the trap of, oh my God, this going bad, this, the other, you know, a client canceled, whatever, as difficult it is to get out of it. And when you do your gratefulness, thankfulness, and your prayer on what you want to go well and what you wish for, whatever is important for you, then it really anchors you to a positive state, and it becomes that grab that when you slip and fall, you grab and you pull yourself out of it, and you manage to really reframe your self-limiting beliefs we all have, right? Oh, I cannot do it. Oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I cannot write a book. Oh, I'm not worthy. My story is bad. And then that gets reframed and helps you get out of it. So these two little things I do every morning and every night, and it anchors me a little bit.
Okay. It's always good to have some sort of like self-reflection every day. I do that too. Like self-reflection at night, you know, things that I'm grateful at, things that I could do better, and we work on it every day. Okay, let's go to another question. We have one question by Balakrishnan Rajagopal. Who do you think are examples of great leaders, both in the past and today?
Wow. For many different reasons, I have many to mention, but let me start with my mom. God bless her soul up there in the heavens. She left about 10 years ago. She was a great leader. She had empathy. She talked last. She was calm. She was always, in a magical way, the wind beneath everybody's wings. She would take all the negativity and she would give positive things to us, to her kids, to the world. I remember how angry I was when Dad died, and with everything that had happened, and throughout my rebellious years after high school. And she was always that calm harbor, that beacon that was an anchor unconditional love, no matter what. And I knew that no matter what mistake I'll do, I always have a safe harbor to go. Juxtapose that to any leader in any company, how powerful that can be. Another leader that I have great respect for is Nelson Mandela, and that's for many different reasons. Perseverance, tenacity, clarity, forgiveness. It takes a great person to really forgive people that have done you so wrong and to see beyond that. I'm not there. I'm working on it, but I'm struggling with it, I must admit. How can you forgive people who hurt you? How can you forget and move on? And he is the epitome, I believe, on that. I'll mention a third one, a leader that I always looked up to. He lives in London now. He used to be the CEO of Omnicom in APAC, and that's Barry. Barry Couples, wherever you are, you've been a role model for me, and I love you for that. He was a great leader, and he was a great leader for me because he made me feel like $1,000,000 no matter what. He was always there. He would always listen to me. And even when he was busy, I will never forget that encounter in his hotel stay in Beijing, where I had a big issue with a client. And he said, we gotta go with the meeting, me included, but come with me, let's resolve the issue. So he starts walking with me to the elevator, to his room, to dress and undress and redress and brush his teeth and go back down to the meeting. And during that time, he was listening, he was telling me his opinion and his guidance on what to do. What kind of a leader does that and never lets you down, always has time for you to listen and give you guidance and advice, and to know that if you screw up, I'll cover your back. Wow, that's powerful. So there you have it, 3. One not famous like Mom, one very famous like Mandela, and one who's very dear to me like Barry.
Okay, that's good answers. We have one question for the students actually. Any words of advice for new graduate who was about to embark, on into the working world for the first time? Do you have any advice for them?
Wow. Yes, a lot of advice, and I work with a lot of you, or not only with IUMW, but with different universities. I work with a lot of students, and I do that because I will never forget when I was in your shoes, a couple of people that had a tremendous impact on me. And so I'm paying it forward every time I engage with you. My advice would be to develop your ethos, to hold your integrity right. All of these values on leadership that I talked about, look into galvanizing it for yourself. Above all, I'll give you only one tip, and that really encapsulates everything. When you will hit the real world, most likely, not 100%, that doesn't exist as I said, but most likely, whatever your beautiful universities taught you, you're going to unlearn and you're going to relearn the method that your company and your employer will have. And even life will teach you a thing or two the hard way or the easy way. And so what you learn today is simply skills and knowledge, nothing else. And if you want to succeed and really fly high, make sure that you put your skills and your knowledge under the umbrella of attitude. You need to focus on your attitude, to be positive, to be resilient, to be flexible, to be a great listener, to be humble, to really learn and seek to understand first before you can really barge in with your idea. Humility is very, very important, okay? And that doesn't mean that you think less of yourself, right? It just means that you find your place, and all that will galvanize your attitude. And I can tell you that your attitude is what's going to hold your skill and your knowledge together as that will evolve. So focus on your attitude, make sure you built it well, and make sure that when you go out there in your first interview for your first employer, you make sure that you give first and you give without the intention to get back. Trust me, fame and money will come your way when you do all that, when you galvanize your attitude, when you give first to really learn how everything works. It will really take you a long way. And fame and money will come for you naturally. You don't have to work for it at all. And you have a lifetime for that. Okay? So make sure you do your internships. Make sure you get that experience to build your CV. And above everything, build your attitude to make sure that when you hit the ground running, you're going to do the right thing the right way.
Reminded me of that remember when we had our first meeting, you introduced us to that power skills.
Yes.
So yeah, we basically our faculty developed this power skills: fearless, curious, attitude and articulation, and master. So that's 4 power skills for all students to learn.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is exactly right. And I'll give you one more gem that my late friend Jeff Lee used to tell me. He was the first non-Malaysian MD of Panasonic Malaysia. You know, Japanese companies put always Japanese MDs. He was the first Malaysian to be there. Leave that slide on, and I need to talk about that in a minute. So Jeff told me, AV, my secret of success is that everywhere I go, mind you, he was 55, said I take my PDA with me. And I said, Jeff, what's your PDA? He always used to speak with acronyms. He said, my PDA is my passion, my discipline, and my action. Wow, I never forgot that. Never forgot that. And when I really looked into it, it applies to everybody. Don't apply only to the graduates, right? Passion, discipline, action. Passion and action, fairly easy. You love it, you're passionate about it, you do something about it. The middle part, the D. The demon of discipline is what really you need to harness. And if we manage that D, the discipline, into everything we do with diligence, then we will really be successful. So take your PDA everywhere you go and say to yourself, if it's to be, it's up to me, which is my favorite phrase. And back to power skills, right? Yes, I remember, and we talked about this, and my wish is for every university and every institution to really instill this course as a mandatory course to everybody before they graduate. And it is about the power skills. These are the so-called soft skills. I hate the term soft skills because it doesn't do it justice. It's power skills, about being fearless, about having the right attitude, mastering what you do, to be curious and to be adaptive and to be vulnerable and to have the courage and all of this stuff that we talked about today. And respect and kudos to IUMW, because after that industry advisory board, they really developed this, they put it in the curriculum, and I hope that this becomes a beacon for every university to adopt. You guys are my heroes, and I seriously believe that if your graduates are masters on power skills, then attitude will, then knowledge will come after it. And this is what is really going to make them successful. So respect to you, IUMW. You've done it really well.
Thank you for that, Andreas. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, any advice on finding your true passion in life, especially perhaps if you're not sure what career path you want to take?
Right. I don't know how I can tell you how to find your passion. I have no clue. I have no idea. The only thing that I can tell you is to be fearless, to experiment. fearless to fail. Learn how to fail or fail to learn, they say, and it's true. To be curious, to have that curious intelligence, and to really put yourself in all the situation with all your being. Because if you don't, how will you really understand what you like and what you don't like? If you stay in your cocoon thinking, and God knows I'm a thinker. God knows sometimes I do analysis to paralysis. My nephew, God bless him, yesterday in a phone call from Greece, he gave me a mouthful to stop analyzing things and start doing. He was right. He is right. And so once you start doing, you will see your heart that you have to follow will tell you what is right. Heart and logic are important, right? And I'm not saying be reckless on destroying things along your way. That means you don't have discipline. That means you didn't take your PDA with you, but experiment, learn, try new things, try new ideas. And there is not such a thing as it's never too late. And so the universe will tell you what is right. The universe will guide both your heart and your logic to really understand what really drives you. And I can tell you, when we drive what we are passionate about, beautiful things will happen. That doesn't mean the journey is not going to be difficult. It can be easy, it can be tough. You might fall, you might do mistakes, you might screw up, but it's okay. If you're really passionate about something, you'll find that grab to hold on to and really get back up and do what you have to do. When I started AMV Plus, everybody thought I'm crazy. When I quit the Star in June or so last year, I didn't do it to really start my company. It took me a couple of months to figure out what to do and what I really want to do. Should I go back to the corporates? But it's COVID. Nobody wants another CEO, et cetera, et cetera. So then I thought, after all that, hey, this is what I really, really, really love to do. So let me try and see. Actually, not try, let me do and see. Yoda is right. Yoda is very right. There is not do. There's no try. It's do or do not, right?
Yeah.
And another great man said that if you think you can, or if you think you cannot, you're right in both occasions. So pick one. If you can't, it will lead you nowhere. It will lead you to nothing. But if you believe you can, give it a try. And if you fail, so what? So to find your passion, to really find your purpose, you just gotta try everything that life brings you along and grab the bull by the horns and be ready to fail if you have to, and really do something else and see how that's gonna go. So I'm sorry, I don't have a recipe apart from just saying that in order on how to find your passion. And if it changes along the way, that's okay too. I sort of envy, I shouldn't really say that, but I envy just a little bit, okay? Allow me that little bit. The young graduates, my goodness, you guys have the world at your feet. And I don't know, but maybe you can fail more times than I can do now with the responsibilities I have at 55. So go try, go see what works for you. And if 5 years later, things change, and they will, that's okay. Try something else. And if that's how we leave this earthly matter into the universe, satisfied that we really did try, then why not? When I joined the Star, before I joined the Star, I had many people, and many times they asked me still the question, and they said, what the heck are you doing? Are you out of your mind? First of all, look at yourself in the mirror. You're not Malaysian, number one. Number two, you're not Chinese. Number three, you're not editorial. You don't come from this world of newspapers and media. You're in advertising. And part of me said, you know what, they're right. And part of me was scared to bits. And the only thing that really made the pivot to my decision, I said to myself one day, do you want to go into 2020 and look back and ask yourself, what if you would have taken that job and you will never know the answer? So then I accepted right after that thought. And I thought, next year, no matter what happens, if I turn back and I say to myself, what if? I will know the answer. And I do. And here we go.
That's great. Talking about universe, can we have one more questions? I saw a great question. Do you believe in universe? Do you believe in karma and life journey, which is, as you say, complicated?
Say that again?
Do you believe in universe? Do you believe in karma and life journey, which is, as you say, complicated?
Yes, I do. I do. And there is another question I was looking there about the imposter syndrome. But
Okay.
I love that question because I was asked before. I do believe in the universe. Like I said, I'm very spiritual. I always have this debate of what's next. Is this it, or is there something after it? I think there is, and I think that nothing happens just by mere coincidence. When I look back in my completely unplanned life, I don't think it was a coincidence that I'm here today, loving the country I believe in, that became my second, or rather first now, home, with the people I know, with the experiences I had, and how everything turned out to be somehow connected, closing loops. And I don't think that was by coincidence. At the same time, however, I also need to say that I do not believe in karma and the universe, any destiny, in a fatalistic way, meaning, oh, well, it's my destiny, so I don't need to do anything. And therefore, I'll just pray to the universe and the gods and leave myself to it. No, I think that's also wrong, because mom used to say an old Greek saying that says, "Sinathina kehirakini," which means pray to gods, but also you move your hands and legs. And so while we need to believe into something that gives us anchors and it gives us a beacon to a safe harbor, at the same time, we really, really, really need to try our best. We need to try hard. We need to try things that we haven't tried before. We need to look and find our passion. We need to find our why and our purpose. And we can't just let it be. So it has to happen both ways. Otherwise, if we just leave it to destiny and everything will happen, that's a bit fatalistic, which I don't believe in. And I would like to, and I hope that makes sense. And it doesn't really matter what religion you're in, because to whomever God you pray and you just leave it to the God, then you're gonna sound like that one that was on top of the roof during the flood, that didn't take the boat that passed by, didn't take the log that passed by, and got drowned, went all the way up to the heavens and start arguing with God why you didn't save me. And God said, I sent you a boat, you didn't take it. I said you a tree trunk, you didn't jump on it. Well, what do you expect me to do? Right? So help yourself to be helped. And I love that point that Putri puts to everybody. I hear a lot about imposter syndrome these days, particularly for women and new graduates. Not only for women and new graduates, Putri, for men and everybody. I've heard this a lot, and it's not new, it's not unheard of, and it's okay. And I think that sometimes we believe to the circumstances to start doubting ourselves. It happened to me many times, especially when things don't go your way, especially when you fail. Then you start doubting yourself. That's natural. That's logical. That's just being human, right? And that's when really we have to look back to our journey. And I never want to look back to my journey in order to define my future, because that would be a mistake. I want to look back to my journey, my milestones, my values and beliefs, and my leadership attributes in order to build better, different, adapt to change. What is done is done. And so these values are going to be the ones that are going to draw you, me, and everybody who occasionally suffocates from that imposter syndrome to say, hey, I'm good enough. I'm good enough. I deserve to be better. And I have the power to really do that. And it's not because I'm arrogant. It's not because I don't want to admit my shortcomings and my faults. It is because I'm okay with that. And it's because I forgive myself, and it's because I learn. There is no failure, my NLP teacher says. It's only feedback. And I believe in that. And if we believe in that, which is huge of a principle to adopt, there is no failure, only feedback. And we look at our good moments and in our bad moments, then the imposter syndrome is going to start being diluted and say, no, I'm good enough. And I will find, I don't know, but I will find a way to become better and achieve what my purpose and my dream is. And then we will swipe it away. Might be there, but we will find a way to keep it away. I hope that makes sense.
It makes sense. Thank you so much, Andreas. I believe that's the end of our session, basically. Do you have any last word before we end the event?
Last words, yes.
Yeah.
What can I say? First and foremost, thank you to you and to you, IUMW, for this. The entire Squadcoms team is just awesome. You are a powerhouse, guys, a powerhouse of ideas and making things happen. And I'm grateful. I am also grateful to every single one of you who logged into this Zoom meeting. I know it's an hour and a half. We were talking before with the team, and I said, nah, let's not do PowerPoints and stuff. We'll just keep it conversational. And so you made it for an hour and a half of blabbering. Hopefully, I added value, and hopefully this was useful for you. My purpose in life is to be a catalyst for positive change. And if that added value to your journey, then I hope it also became a catalyst for you to think back and see your journey and how you're going to write yours and publish it. Okay. And also, there are so many questions in the chat, and I will save the chat, and I will, what I do not know is who exactly asked what on how to contact you. So I put a couple of times, and before we go, I'll put again one more time all my contact details in the chat, my mobile number on WhatsApp, my email, my website is very easy, and all these are in there too, amvplus.com. But I'll put all the information there. So feel free to contact me, email, WhatsApp, LinkedIn. Please connect with me on LinkedIn and we can chat there as well. And I can only promise you that I will reply to each and every one of you as fast as I can. I always do that. If you want to get a hold of the book, that are either you can buy it on iHub, that link is also there, or some they want bulk sales or corporate discounts. Christmas is coming in, just email me directly. I'll be very, very happy to discuss that with you. And last but not least, what would be really, really, really awesome, if you can, is to make sure to turn on your camera, and we will take a couple of pictures and just keep it to memory. I am super grateful for you. We'll give you 10 seconds to do your makeup. I'll do mine. My eyebrows are thick and bushy. Okay, there you go. Now I'm pretty. And then, oh, thank you. You put it, oh, you guys put it there. Okay. And I was just doing the same thing. So I'm going to say in the chat.
Okay, 1, 2, wait. Okay.
All right. We're good to go.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's take one more. 1.
Take all screens?
Hmm?
Did you take all screens? Wow, you're good.
No. I'm trying to take all screen. So I have someone here to help me with it.
Okay.
Okay. So one more, just do something different.
You're gonna get that easily. You're mistaken. I downloaded the chat. I know who you are, where you live, where you work, and I'm going to come and hunt you down.
Hey.
Okay. Freestyle and everybody.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Andreas.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for the session, Mr. Andreas. I believe you've participated in a lot of our events, and we're so grateful for your never-ending support, basically. That's it for today, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again. Do follow us on our socials at the ComSpot on Instagram, TikTok, and subscribe to our YouTube and Spotify channels. Until next time, good evening and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.